always remember the sun shining when I was a kid. I remember when the summers were summer. I remember the summers were so hot, and the tar in the roads would bubble. We used to go and bust the bubbles in the tar because it was so warm, and we were covered in tar. All the wee kids were all black, they were covered in tar. I grew up in a little village called Springside, a little hairy-assed village, a little mining community near Kilmarnock, just south of Glasgow. And it was weird because it was the 60s that I was brought up in and had my childhood in, but it felt like the 40s. It was like stuck in a time warp, this place. Even now when you go back, they're into flares now, so they're gradually catching up, you know. But it was like, I had a great childhood, and it was a little village that was surrounded by loads of countryside, and I spent my time like just playing football. I used to say to my mum in the morning, "Cheerio, Mum, I'm off," and that was at 9 o'clock, and I was back at 10 o'clock that night, and it was such a nice community kind of. There was no airs or graces or worries. I think that's probably what a nice childhood should be, that you didn't worry about anything. But the people that was brought up with, the adults, were all guys with the flat caps, the coats, and the stereotypical women that were shaped like missiles. That's what they're like missiles with, big shape. Their bum started at the back of the neck. And my granny was a stereotypical missile. She was like a big exocet. And my grandfather was a wee wiry man. He was always like trying to better himself. He was the first man in the village to get a TV, and the first guy to get a proper car, a nice car. But the inhabitants were jealous. They vandalised it and stuff, so they couldn't keep it. And but he was a bit of a dapper Dan. He had the flat cap and he wore nice ties and stuff. And but things kind of went downhill after my dad shot his leg off. My dad shot him, which didn't go down at all well. We kind of don't talk about it. Haven't talked about it for years. Yeah, so that's the story. They went out hunting, and my dad had one eye. What a family I come from. You don't give a guy a loaded gun with one eye. You don't go shooting with a one-eyed man. You just don't do it. If there's like a cardinal rule of hunting, don't go shooting with a one-eyed guy, because you're going to get in the sights of his bung eye. Blew my granddad's leg off. Anyway, my granddad, he lost so much blood that he went blind as well. So you can imagine the reaction that all the family took to my father. Dynamics of attitude toward my dad kind of changed. He became a bit of an outcast because of what he did. And what he got was a whole lot of crap dumped on him, all this bad feeling. Now, when you have bad feeling, you kind of like look for someone to dump your bad feeling, all this guilt and shame and stuff. You look for someone else to dump it. And I became the dumping ground for my father. I've come to terms with now, but at the time it kind of screwed me up a wee bit. But I understand it though. So I kind of went through my life with all that, what happened from that incident. I kind of got part of that, like dumped, and I carried that around for years and years. But my father he had his own hang-ups. He was the type of man. He was an illegitimate kid, so he had that stigma attached to him. So that was another load of stuff that he kind of dumped on. But he never complimented me. He never said, encouraged me to do anything, or said well done for anything that I did. So, and he was an academic, so he kind of said I was no good. I wasn't good enough. That's what I was going to have in my epitaph. Here lies Alexander Millar, who wasn't good enough, and then he became good enough. And that's kind of like what I've tried to prove to him. I am bloody good enough at something. And even though he's dead and gone, I kind of that's still running this program up in here to prove to him, aye, I'm good enough, you toe rag. Despite everything that was going wrong in the family itself, my childhood was a great childhood. I loved it. And I was always a people watcher. I always noticed the minutiae, the small things that happened. It's the small details and things. And that's kind of, I always viewed what was going around us like, it was almost like a street ballet. It was almost like a theatre production. And watching old guys dismount from their bikes was like, wow, look at that. It was nothing. It was just an old guy getting off a bike. But to me, it was like, wow, I see the way he did that. And people go, what are you on about? That kind of led me to producing what I produce now in the gadgets. That it's the small details. It's the ordinary that I kind of turn around to make extraordinary. That's the kind of like premise behind it all. That's what happens in my paintings.